7:07. This is Thursday, November 19th, meeting of the North Andover Board of Health. We're now called to order. Our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have some visitors here tonight, so they'd been told we'd start at 7:15, but I presume you'll be okay if we start a bit early, right? We'll put off the minutes for the moment. We have no old business before us. Under new business, we have two items that are listed on the agenda. Based on conversation between the chair and the applicant, the 45 Elm Street has been put off to be handled in another means, so we will not be having that item before us tonight. Item B is pertinent to 7 Royal Crest, Apartment 4. They received a order letter pertinent to housing code violation from our staff, applicable to a complaint, and there's some background information that we've all received. The Royal Crest / Aimco requested an appeal tonight, so they're here for that. So perhaps you'd like to come forward and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
I'm Brian Nicholas. I'm the area manager for Aimco.
You'll need to come to the, or you can use this microphone here also if you prefer to sit, whichever you want to do.
I'm Brian Nicholas. I'm the area manager for Aimco. I've been the acting community manager for some time. Here is Jay Kale. He's the service manager at the community, as well as Dan O'Connor, and he is the new community manager at the property. He's been with us for about 45 days.
Okay. So, don't go away. This is, you're not done yet. Susan, maybe you want to talk a bit about the order letter and how that came about, and then you need to state what you're appealing based on what was ordered.
Okay. Well, we received a complaint on, what day were we? Let me get back to the timeline. October 28th. Is that it? And on October 30th, Michelle Grant went to Royal Crest, Building 7, number 4, correct? Okay. At that time, let me see if I can bring this up here. She took a few photos that we can look at. I believe, yes, these were that day.
Yes.
And there are various walls in the area. I'm sorry if you can't see much, but there are some photos here. The lighter ones are from the day of the inspection. The other ones are from the prior to the inspection. So that'll be relevant in a minute. So these are the conditions that the inspector saw on the day of. For that reason, a order letter was written and sent to the management requesting that they, basically, I'll read what it says. An authorized inspection was made of your property at the above address on October 30th. This inspection revealed violations of the Sanitary Code, Chapter 2, as listed below. Owner must hire, confer, and meet on all portions of this order letter with the North Andover Health Department upon receipt. Failure to act will result in further action. After the tenant has vacated, inspectional services will do a complete walkthrough, if necessary, to determine additional code violations. Failure to respond within the allotted time period may result in Board of Health finding that the dwelling is unfit for human habitation. This apartment cannot be rented until the Health Department is satisfied with compliance. The tenant was moving out, or had already moved all their items out at that moment?
All their belongings were moved out. They had not vacated yet. They had a few more days or a few more weeks left on their lease, so they had a key and they were able to let me in.
So we recognize these are the tenants here.
These are the, you were the occupant?
Yes.
the leaseors of the apartment at that time.
The Greenwoods, yes, is that you? Okay. Along with the little baby there who's 4 months old. Yeah, sleeping. So it wasn't long after that. I suppose there was one communication by an email, and then we received the letter to request the Board of Health meeting to request rescinding the order letter based on the findings that they had submitted a letter from a company, was it Smith & Wesson? Smith & Wesson, who we do know, they have done a lot of work in a lot of different apartments at Royal Crest, so we're familiar with that company. So with that, they're here for that purpose. So, anything to add to that at this point? Okay.
So the reason why we're appealing is because we were notified of the issue on Tuesday afternoon. The resident had on Friday asked us to look at the second bedroom, but we were not aware of anything in the bathroom until Dan talked to Elijah here on Tuesday. We went over there on Tuesday afternoon, saw the issue in the bathroom. We contacted Smith & Wesson. They came down on Wednesday morning, which I apologize, should be the 28th. And they advised us that they took moisture readings throughout the bathroom. They identified everything was below the threshold that they would determine as being like a moisture saturated or damp area. And so they advised us that this was all a surface issue and that we should clean the area appropriately and then paint over it with a prime base and then repaint it with a semi-gloss paint that would be a mold inhibitor style paint. So the issue was a surface issue. The order talks about us removing the affected walls and ceilings. So we are appealing the fact of having to remove them as the day that Michelle came. We had already completed all of the recommended repairs from the Smith & Wesson assessment, gone in, cleaned, painted, and corrected the issue. Upon returning, we did see a small area of affected of a door jamb that maybe we did not see initially when we went in there, but the door jamb is wood door jamb. There's no plumbing running near it, and it's painted in semi-gloss paint. So it should be easy enough to clean that with a mold product that, and then just repaint it. So what is it? You fixed it? We fixed it. No, it has not come back. That area was up and inside the door jamb. So our feelings are that when the vendor addressed the issue, we brought a vendor in to appropriately remediate the area, that he missed a spot on the interior of the door jamb, probably less than 4 inches. And I do have a color photo of the, finished results if you'd like to see the repairs that were completed on the 28th after our vendor. I can supply those pictures. You've had the opportunity to read the Smith & Wesson report. They identified that basically the issues of the areas affected were from, where the storage of, say, wet towels were on the door, or towels would have been stored inside the linen closet, and there was no circulation of air in that area, which caused this surface mold to form. So this is the after picture in the linen closet. There's a small section which maybe, that's could be something she was referring to in her report on Friday after the repairs were done. And then this is what I'm talking about on the inside of the jamb, of the door jamb, and inside the linen closet, which is that's the current status. Yeah.
You said that work was done on the 28th.
That was done on Wednesday.
And Susan, those are pictures we're seeing that are from October 30th, correct?
Correct.
You did work in the bedroom, you said.
there was no work that was done in the bedroom as part of this. This is all in the bathroom.
This is all in the bathroom?
Yeah.
But these pictures are from,
They can't see these, right? So
I can't
we
see
should be
them.
putting the
Can we-
screen down.
yeah, hit the thing over there so that,
We don't use these things too often, so didn't think. Isn't there a? Where is it? You do it? Thank you. Something we didn't think about. Here we are thinking they can see.
that's looking at the start of your pictures. Is that the first?
This one.
The-
Yeah.
Some of those might be the same one. No, it doesn't do that. Oh, wait, yeah, it does. I'm sorry, apologize.
Michelle, when were these pictures taken?
A couple days after the 28th, so about, I think it was the 30th that I was there?
So the inspection was on the 30th.
Correct.
Yeah.
So these pictures here are labeled 1030.
Where these pictures are taken
That's the
in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And those there that you showed us?
These are
These are later,
these are the bathroom.
yeah.
Those were the pictures, those are not our pictures, those are
pictures.
Royal
What he
Crest
just- that's
pictures.
file, that's what you just handed us
Yeah.
there.
I haven't seen
Yeah, it's the
Neither
same,
have I.
same apartment?
Same apartment, but it sounds like it's just the bathroom.
Yeah, those are only the bathroom, and this
So
is
they
mentioned.
they already did what they felt was necessary.
Appropriate.
So they bleached and
After this?
before.
Before?
No, there's just a little bit. The work that we did was in the bathroom that you're looking at. This right here is actually part. If you look in the Smith and Wesson inspection that Smith and Wesson did on the 28th, they do mention this in the report. They tested this surface area and identified that there was no increased moisture level on their readings in our report. Therefore, what we would do here is clean and repaint this area of wall. Their report indicates that a piece, there was a resident had stated there was a piece of furniture in this area. The report states that the restricted airflow being on the first floor, where that piece of furniture was, could have caused this situation. Our appeal is that instead of the removal of this wall, to clean and paint it because there's no increased moisture readings in this entire apartment. This entire apartment's been assessed by a third-party specialist with the appropriate, tools to determine if there's any increased moisture, which would define as chronic dampness, and there's no dampness in the walls. There's no leak. There's nothing to indicate that there is a reason to gut the apartment and do that type of work. So we would like to do what we did in the bathroom, which is clean the area appropriately and paint the wall.
So this is on one corner of one of the bedrooms. I call it the second bedroom. This is one corner, and then there's another picture of the other corner of that bedroom as well.
So is this a chronic problem? I'm trying to figure it out.
It is.
It is. So, I mean, a one-time thing, we shouldn't even be here. This is a one-time thing. So this is It keeps coming back, is that it?
We have an assessment that was done in April by Smith & Wessel in the same apartment because the resident in the living room underneath, or I'm sorry, it could have been right next to the air conditioner, reported a small area where they were having an issue. I have that report. Smith & Wessel went through the apartment during that inspection and also identified that there's no increased moisture levels in the walls. This is a situation that we've gone in there within the past 6 months. The resident had noted in her report to Michelle that there was a time in 2011, which is 4 years ago, October 2011, where we did remove walls in the apartment and did replace walls in the apartment in the bedroom.
So that was a problem then, too?
That was in 4 years
So
ago.
what did they find as the causative agent?
We
At that
have
time, in 2011.
at this particular building, we have redone some of the exterior brickwork. We've done brickwork at several buildings throughout the community, as well as drainage upgrade projects.
Have you done that foundation work where you dig down to the base of the foundation?
This building, Building 7, has not had the actual foundation. We haven't dug down and done the
So-
foundation. This building's had brick pointing.
Is this on track to have that done?
We're going to be doing all of the buildings throughout the entire community as they're over 40 years old. Our plan with the town is to complete the entire property, as well as we're upgrading various other parts of the drainage systems throughout the property, as the drainage itself is.
So my understanding with moisture, these properties, this property, they're below grade. So you actually walk in the door and you walk down. So about 3-4 feet. The windows are just a foot above the ground.
4 feet down.
So it's not unusual, obviously, to have mold in the soil and such, outside, you're opening the windows, and it's not unusual, of course, if you don't have a foundation or walls that have not been treated, that, they would come through the walls. Now, 4 years ago, they took down these exterior walls and put up sheetrock. I don't know if it was paperless sheetrock, which is the recommendation now, or if it was just the regular sheetrock. I would have thought that this property would have been on a fast track at that point, that it would identified clearly as a problem property. But
So I'm assuming
that's
that behind that wall
right.
was remediated as well.
Right, so we're assuming.
So I think it was. So what they called it was that it was remediated, and that would mean that behind the sheetrock as well, they treat or cut out the wood, or they treat it, one or the other, and then they, refinish the wall.
So if it's not the water coming through, then it has to be water in the air, correct? I
Moisture
mean, that
inside the
creates,
apartment.
to have furniture around a room should not block airflow. That's a normal way to have a room, is you put something against the wall, or you have a bed and a desk and a chair. You shouldn't have mold coming up and growing on the bottoms of the furniture.
Let me ask you, when
So,
they
it's
did
just
the remediation, did they put a moisture barrier around around the wall?
I was not at this property in 2011.
'Cause I believe
when
you can't put
this- but-
sheetrock against-
Yeah, but any work, I could safely say we have been using. Smith & Wessel was used as a company to observe the work that was done, so they're a specialist, they're licensed to make sure that this type of job is done appropriately. So they have documents stating that they were there to make sure that the environment was maintained.
Also oversee your maintenance people doing that?
Smith & Wessel is there for, to ensure the state regulations are being met, to code when,
So oversee it?
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
not doing the work?
They're not doing the work, I can check.
This is one of many that this has had to have been done to. These walls have been taken down and such. And we did get called often when the work is being done. Sometimes we just go by. And, what has happened in the past, in 2010, Michelle just showed up to check on a property, and they were actually closing up the walls that were still wet behind it. So you can see this dripping right down here. So I'm just showing a pattern of, not completing the job, so.
Yeah, I'd like to further elaborate upon that. I knew that this would be the main topic of discussion at this meeting tonight, and I've done some research, and looking at a memo from the Department of Health to AMCO. It says the North Andover Health Department has found that material conditions documented over the past 17 years have not been corrected and continue to cause conditions of chronic wetness in multiple rental units and common areas within the Royal Crest Estate complex. And this is written on July 11th, 2007. So the problem continues
8 years.
25 years later. And the reason, and by the way, Building 7, Apartment 4, that's the main issue of concern right now. Obviously, there is an issue there. I'm glad to hear that certainly buildings that are older than 4 years, you're going to start some further remediation. But again, looking at the history there, that was a peat bog.
Yeah, Mr. McCarthy, I'm sorry to interrupt, and maybe, Michelle could probably let you know that, how many complaints have we had in the past 2 years? Maybe two, one? This is the second. I mean, this is the second complaint that we've received at the property to correct. This is the second complaint in 2 years at the community.
Is this the second complaint in 2 years? Or there have been more than?
Formal. But we receive phone calls from people, tenants, that don't want to give their names, and they're afraid of retaliation. So we don't get their names, and we don't go out for inspection.
And I apologize to be stepping up and interrupting. I know this has been going on for some time, and I apologize I'm running late. My name is Ted Papadopoulos. I don't know if you need me to sign in anywhere. I'm counsel for Royal Crest, and I'm the one who had originally requested the appeal on the current violation order. And if I'm permitted to speak as well, I apologize again for even interrupting. I think... Okay, thank you. So I guess one of the concerns I'm having right now, just sitting in and listening, because this obviously commenced prior to my arrival, is that we're talking about matters back, I've written down in my notes, issues back in 2010, a Department of Public Health order issued back in 2007. Unfortunately, at least in my opinion, I don't believe that this hearing is about any issues from 2007 to the extent that we're talking about any chronic dampness, which is what the determination was made by, I believe, Ms. Grant during her inspection. It would have to be, in my understanding of the state sanitary code, for chronic dampness, it would have to be history within this specific unit for the violation order. We're not going to be looking at a 2007 Department of Public Health, nor are we going to be looking at an issue from 2010 in an unrelated building either.
We already established that in the 4 years that they've been there, they've had at least 4 times where it's either been they've had to rip down the walls or they've had to come and clean, and they just would clean and paint. So that's already been established, so it's been a pattern. And I'm not saying that we don't say why, we just say what. So when Ms. Grant said, inspectional services will come back out and we'll, look and we walk through, that's what we do. And we take into account reports and such to make decisions.
And my understanding is as well is that another responsibility of the Board of Health as well, and within the state sanitary code, is something to the effect of potentially orders against tenants to the extent that the board may make the decision or the inspector may make the determination that maintenance or improper maintenance of the apartment, or clutter, for instance, extermination issues if there's an infestation, and the infestation is being caused by a particular tenant's conduct. That's also within the board's discretion to issue an order against tenants as opposed to the owner. So this isn't, it's not a requirement, in other words.
There was no such finding in this case, nor was ever alleged that there was not anything like that. So
I understand that that's not the determination of the inspector.
Right.
But again, in terms of even the laws governing landlord-tenant law under 239(8)A, there's a notice requirement. And with respect to any retaliation, which I've heard as well, that's another comment or a note that I've made here, is with respect to anonymous reports, which don't turn into or develop into any violation order, I imagine anonymous requests for inspections would still warrant potentially an inspection of that particular unit or any other unit.
Give us their name or where they live.
Understood. In which case,
They call them,
there's
they
really
ask
no...
us predominantly questions about the sanitary code, what their rights are, whether or not they should seek an attorney, which is not in our purview,
Yep.
because that's not what we do.
Absolutely.
We're clearly just the sanitary
And a
code.
lot of times,
Absolutely.
they just
So they-
want to know if the owner is doing the proper thing. So if they're put up in a hotel because they're working on their unit, they want to know if it's done right.
Yeah.
So we may not
They wanna
log
know
that,
protocol.
but we know that they're in a hotel. There's no complaint filed. So that's what we say when there's a lot more than just a complaint list. We have worked with Royal Crest for a decade. We have partnered with them a lot. We call them instantly when there's an issue, when it's, and try to resolve it with them. And every time we call, of course, there's a different manager, which is very difficult. We've had them come in, meet with all the building departments. We've had them come in and meet with police, fire. And each time there's a new manager, we try to establish, which is what I did with the manager when we spoke the other day. I said, let's get together and we'll talk about, the history and where we're going from here.
And I presume you've had
you know.
absolute compliance from whichever manager you've dealt with. And again, in terms of discussing the history and whether or not various managers has sometimes, for instance, I don't know, made it difficult, if that's what you're insinuating.
No,
I don't know
I'm
that there's
saying
been...
It's a turnover, is what I'm saying.
Understood.
I didn't say different.
But I don't know that there's been non-compliance. In other words, anything that's been requested from Manco, as I understand and having reviewed the files, is absolute compliance and, as you indicated, working and corroborating and working very cooperatively with the Board of Health. This violation order, though, specifically with this particular unit, involves Smith & Wessel issuing a report in which they've used, and I don't know if this is something that's already been provided, in which they use what's considered to be the industry standard in determining whether or not there is any dampness or moisture in the walls. And the findings from Smith & Wessel do not support any unreasonable amount of moisture in the walls. Now, as to the specific locations found and photographs taken, my understanding is, and at least the determination made even by Smith & Wessel, is that this is tenant-related, and that the areas that do have any kind of mold findings or any moisture are as a result of whether it be a damp towel or whatever may have been maintained in that area that caused that issue. Now, again, in these leases, and very regularly, you have requirements, because, again, we do not live in the apartment. Possession is strictly in the tenant's favor. We don't go in there and just do inspections unannounced. We have requirements in the lease that they notify us, that they do occasional cleaning, wipe downs, et cetera, and notify us if there's any issue within the unit.
That was driven by our department.
Absolutely.
To put it in there.
And we appreciate
We
that.
actually
We appreciate that,
wrote a lot
but
of that stuff.
I'm
Especially
also
with the mold
local
and
counsel
water
to the National Apartment Association. We also have, as a standard in the National Apartment Association's lease documents, mold sections specifically requiring tenants to advise us. Because again, under 239(8)(a), it's always any condition or any claim of rent withholding has to be first with notice to the landlord, because otherwise the landlord can't remediate that which they don't know. Now, in terms of this particular issue, and there are work orders as well with specifically this apartment number. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but the requests from the specific tenant with regards to any claim of any mold are really very sparse. So to now say that there's chronic mold and that this violation requires the ripping down of walls, that's what we're contesting, is that we have a professional company, a professional outfit that's indicated there's no reason to do that,
Okay.
that there is no excessive moisture in the walls.
I want to
That-
say a few things.
Absolutely.
First of all, both of you interrupted when I was speaking.
I apologize.
So let me continue,
Okay.
okay? The issue is apartment 7 Royal Crest. We understand that. And as I was going to say, Royal Crest was built on a peat bog. I think there were 50 buildings there. Each one has 12 apartments. There are 4 on the bottom floor of each building. So there are 200 apartments that are at or below the water table. And those are the apartments that there appears to have been the most problems over the years. Good Lord, as I said, I was reading, going back to 2007, chronic wetness in multiple rental units. It's 10 years, almost 10 years ago. And it goes back 17 years before, 25 years. So the problem is, from my perspective, and I'm an engineer, it should never have been built there to begin with. It was built on a peat bog. It should have been built like the similar complex in Nashua, New Hampshire, above grade, not below grade. I'll tell you, would you want to live in the bottom floor of one of those tenants in Royal Crest? Would you be comfortable? They have a 4-month-old baby.
Permitted to answer, Mr. McCarthy, because you've asked a question. I don't know that we're here to determine whether or not this property should have ever been built. It seems...
It's tenant-related. That's the problem. It's tenant-related. And I'm saying,
Well,
no, the problem is just not tenant-related. It may not even be tenant-related.
Respectfully,
the
Mr.
problem
McCarthy.
is the design of the complex.
Mr. McCarthy,
Not the
respectfully,
tenant.
Mr. McCarthy, I disagree. And respectfully, reasonable minds can
So
disagree.
they're causing the problem?
Reasonable minds can disagree. I'm not telling you here that every single unit that may be at or below level, at or below grade is perfectly okay. But we're not here to discuss the history of Royal Crest, North Andover, the building
I'm saying
permit that
it's
was
a
issued.
systematic
But
problem.
But again, the problem that I have, and this is the problem that I encounter several times with representing landlords, is we have a very significant duty not to discriminate. And in discrimination, the whole concept is that you make these prejudgments and these determinations based on history. You cannot do that. This is here. We're here today for an appeal on 7 number 4. So calling out the history and the determination which you've made, and I do not question your expertise as an engineer as to whether or not this property should have ever been built. However, to now cite somebody for the concept that it was built is inappropriate for this particular order. This is 7 number 4. 7 number 4 has a violation that was issued for chronic dampness. We did not sit on our hands. We hired Smith & Wesson. We put them in there. They did testing. No determination was made to require ripping out of walls. The order in what we're appealing is that there's a requirement from the Board of Health saying you are to rip up the walls. And there's no basis for that. That's the only thing we're appealing. We're not saying we're not going to remediate. We're not saying that we're not going to continue with the plan to address each building as we have, and we will be. And I believe that's a very responsible thing that AIMCO is doing. In this particular unit, 7 number 4, there's no basis to rip up the wall. That's the basis of our appeal.
That's your consultant's opinion.
Absolutely. And if there's something different that we are missing, that there's moisture in the wall, if that determination has been made, again, reasonable minds or experts can disagree. And if that's the case, I sincerely would like to hear that from the Board of Health. All we have, though, from the Board of Health is a determination of chronic because of this issue back in 2001, thus somehow requiring the walls to be ripped up. And I don't know that that's the standard.
Well, first of all,
The objection that your consultant made was that this wasn't due to chronic dampness, but somehow was due to tenant activity. There are pictures here that show, back this way, mold in the ceiling in the top of the corner, and the manager gave us pictures showing mold at the top of a door jamb. Is it the Smith & Wesson statement that those areas of mold are due to tenant activity of...
Well, the bathroom, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's in an area where there's absolutely no way that a leak could have gotten to that area. There's no sign of leakage. So it's moisture buildup in the bathroom.
No,
I mean, this picture is not from a
I
bathroom.
think what we've already are establishing now, clearly, from Smith & Wesson and from what I've heard, this doesn't appear to be coming from behind the wall. It appears to be coming from moisture. Can I ask a question? That when you use your bathroom, does the fan go on?
The fan automatically kicks on when you turn the light on.
Okay,
so
and
it
has
should
the...
ventilate properly.
right.
We've always had problems with not ventilating properly. It's
Okay.
never been taken care of.
Okay. And had work been done on the fan at all since you've been there?
Replaced it twice.
Okay. Unfortunately, there are no building permits to establish that. We don't know where it vents. We don't know if it vents properly. If it automatically goes on when the light's on, I don't feel that you can blame a tenant for it not running at the proper time. Because I guess that would mean that after you take a shower, you have to leave the light on all the time to make sure that it's vented properly. So I don't think that that could be attributed to tenant. Also, I think that taking a moisture reading, I'm not disputing the moisture reading of the actual sheetrock, but the air moisture reading, I think, should be called in question just because it was vacant. There is no human activity in this building. In this unit when it was taken, there was no machinery, clocks, computers, breathing, washing of dishes. Humidity builds up, and it's not vented properly. And I just want to go back to a couple of statements made by previous employees of AIMCO, who basically said, we are exploring other options that may reduce moisture within the apartments, including a positive air exchange. That was one of the things they were looking at. I think that each garden apartment unit should be outfitted with a dehumidifier that auto drains into the sewer line of the building. Very supported by the building inspector on that. Tying gutters and drains, they've done some of the gutter and drain work. And the third step would be to rehabilitate all basement apartments that have had reported moisture issue. At that time also, they were committed to anyone that was empty, they would not re-rent until they were sure. And that's what leads me to that final concern for me, is to re-rent this apartment without knowing, or with knowing this is coming back. When you inhabit this apartment again, it will come back. There's no, unless you're somebody who doesn't have any life to you at all. When you bring that heat in there and life, it's going to happen again because it's happened multiple times in the same unit, and it's happened in other units. So I don't think an empty room test is a valid test, in my opinion, for that. And I think that they're doing, like I said, they're doing a good job on some of the outsides and some of the buildings. We have it all written. They've probably done 10 buildings in 4 years. This was not one of them. So
Right.
apparently there's some other bad buildings.
And I'm looking at this
Yeah.
order letter from July 11, 2007, basically saying everything that you just said. So this rental unit should not have been rented unless it was, it's right here in the orders. Engage the services of a professional company or organization that specializes in the remediation of wet basement conditions. Must be approved by the health office and have experience in this area and be unaffiliated with AIMCO or operations management. A meeting must be held with all parties prior to beginning review of the buildings and an action plan to be agreed upon. The contractor shall be provided access to all buildings as they deem necessary to comply with the above agreed upon plan of action. Minimum, the consultant will supply in writing recommendations as to which buildings are currently wet or have conditions that would apply chronic wetness problems. In addition, they will identify structural elements that have been compromised by chronic wetness, i.e. the identification of compromised sheetrock, rugs, or proposed remediation. These buildings identified will be included in the plan for drainage repair as described in the June 22, 2007 letter. A summation of work completed as it relates to the recommendations will be submitted by all parties. As a result, each building rental unit shall receive a certificate of compliance indicating that the identified source of chronic wetness or affiliated conditions have been properly addressed and remediated. AMCO must engage in the hiring of a contractor whose expertise in the area of water problem identification and remediation of chronic wetness in habitable structures. Has that been done?
Only the part about us all meeting
Yeah.
and talking about where we were going to go forward with that. Then they supplied us a list of the buildings they were going to do and how they were going to do it. And we've been moving on from there since 2011.
So may I ask actually, just because that was a 2007 that you just read?
Yes.
That was dated from 2007? Is it the board's position that that was not complied with, that there were not certificates of compliance issued?
We never got to the point that, working with Royal Crest, it never got to that point.
So In other words, am I
It's
to understand
still
from
open,
reading that the suggestion is that we're out of compliance with the 2007 order? Because I know that was not on the violation at
I still
all.
would recommend going back to that order at this point, because we've done our best to try and work with them over the years.
It's been very difficult.
And, you know, it's,
Had meetings with.
I think we need to get a handle on it.
Michelle?
I think we need to get a handle on it.
What area, let me ask you, because you have remarkable experience with what you do. You're absolute expert in this field. What do you want? Well, no, that's true, though. That's why you're here. But what do you want taken down? The part where you see the mold, or are you talking about gutting the place?
No, not even gutting the place. That was never suggested in the order letter.
what are you talking
Basically, we want to make sure, what usually happens when we go into multiple apartments like this.
Right.
They take down a section, just a square out.
Take a look at
To take a look behind the wall to make sure that there's no mold growing or no black mold growing. And if there's nothing there at that time, then they patch it back up. If there is something there, then they remediate. There was never any suggestion, ever, to gut the apartment, ever.
So wait a minute.
So,
Just so I can, and I
you
can
know,
read the specific
in
section of the
past,
order,
Royal Crest clearly knows that we work all the time with Royal Crest, and that we do go in and we do look behind walls. Over the years, some of you have been there, some of you have not. And it's not a matter of, we would never say you need to gut an apartment because of one area that might have what we can see coming through again.
Well, I can understand.
There
Well, I
was a
appreciate you
case of-
clarifying that.
Just a minute, please.
An awful lot, and
There-
I don't mind if
there.
attorneys are here, but that's why I asked Michelle. I mean, for you to make
did
this
you-
your last stand, For a hole.
We did.
Oh, but if it were a hole, that'd be one thing, and I apologize, Mr. Fixler, I'm reading the order. Unfortunately, as an attorney, I'm bound by reading a document. I have not had conversation with Ms. Grant. When I saw this order, and the reason why we had the conversation is, based on what the order says, it says bathroom and second bedroom mold throughout. And then it says, owner shall hire a licensed professional remediation company, we already have one, to remove affected walls, ceilings, etc. So when it's saying to remove affected walls, ceilings, etc., the interpretation, and this was also something that was discussed with Smith and Wessel to try and interpret this, is it's throughout the bathroom and second bedroom. The understanding we had was remove the walls in the bathroom and second bedroom
maybe-
since it's throughout.
wait a minute.
And if that's incorrect, then perhaps what we're asking for today is clarification.
All right, fine. But the thing is, if there was better communication, all they had to do was pick up the phone and ask Michelle, just like I asked her
I did
now.
email you, Michelle, on Monday,
Talked a little
and
bit.
I did not talk
And
to
the order letter was going out, as you knew, I was sending it out right at that moment. So when you receive it, I said, please give me a call when you receive it. I never received anything back.
Did you
So-
talk to Jay? I didn't talk to you, Michelle.
It was you that I talked to.
I definitely did not talk to Michelle.
So-
I sent you an email on Monday.
No, I
the
spoke live
2nd.
to someone. But with that being
Maybe it was
said,
Dan.
in
I
the
think it was
past,
Dan. You spoke to Dan.
in the
Was it Dan?
past,
Yeah, you
Dan
spoke
is
to
here.
Dan.
so, hold on. In the past, Royal Crest has always picked up the phone. We've always tried to communicate. What is the issue? What is it that you want to see, Michelle? And you guys know that as well. We've always tried to reach out and make sure that we're not stepping over our boundaries with you people, and you know that. And we're not stepping over our boundaries with the tenant either. So, and that call never came through. What is it that the office wants? Do you want us to open up this wall here and take a look behind it? That conversation, the first contact was the letter from your office saying you wanted a hearing. And that was that. So,
Well, my comment is that we have had,
and this is not an argument, I have to say. I mean, it's not an argument. It is to straighten something out, and because you took it to the next level, that's why we're here today. This never would have happened. You never would have been in front of the board if there was a conversation with our office saying, what is it exactly that the office wants?
Well, with all due respect, Ms. Grant, the reason why we're here is because we have a right to appeal a finding by the Board of Health.
Absolutely.
So it's not that we're here, and we do sincerely disagree with your order.
That's okay.
You've made a determination about chronic dampness which requires removal of walls based on your order. We have a professional outfit indicating that wipe down is all that's necessary based on the fact that there's no
Right out of
moisture.
the book. You know that this
I know that the
is-
section you've
this
cited is out of the book.
section that is in there.
I do.
And then the remediation, so the affected areas of the walls, and if you needed clarification on that, you should have called.
Ms.
You should
Grant,
have
you've
called.
ordered removal of affected walls. And with all due respect, I agree with you that this is not a fight. But what we do have here, and perhaps this is necessary for the board to be aware, is that we have an attorney who served notice to our office as a result of the Greenwoods complaint to the Board of Health. And the reason why we're here is because, first of all, we didn't even know about the date of the hearing. I heard about it directly from the attorney that's representing the Greenwoods, well before we received anything from the Board of Health. And we're not saying that there's any, cooperation between you and the tenants. However, I have correspondence directly from the opposing counsel in this case. No, I'm not suggesting you mailed it late. I'm suggesting that I got a letter, and I have it with me. I have a letter here. I have the letter from the attorney, is what I'm saying.
No, we have it too.
Yep, where the attorney notifies me that the parties will be there on the hearing on the 19th.
You didn't suggest that.
And that was well before, I think even the letter was sent to my office, indicating that the date of the hearing would be on the 19th. And I have no problem with that. For instance, I have no problem with the fact that opposing counsel may have contacted the board to find out when is the hearing, et cetera. That's just a matter of inquiry. But the reason we're here is not because there hasn't been an ability to cooperate with the Board of Health. It's that this also has an additional piece to it, which is that we have tenants that are claiming that they've had this issue repeatedly and have notified us on several occasions and we haven't addressed it, and that's just simply not true. And that's why we're here, because we're trying to make sure that
Right.
Exactly. But what we need to clarify is the record where the Board of Health, and it's a prima facie, when the Board of Health provides an order in the housing courts, which is where this may potentially end up at some point, it is prima facie evidence, once you have an order, a violation order from the Board of Health, that there was a condition. And what we're saying is that there was never a condition. Anytime we were notified of any issues in the apartment, we've addressed them immediately. What this specifically says is that there is a chronic issue that requires removal of walls. That is a problem. And the record we're trying to set straight is, to the extent that the board is saying, do some testing, to the extent that the board is saying, open up a section of the wall and let us know the results, that is not what this order says.
That's why at the
this
top
order
it
says
said-
chronic dampness,
it
you are
did
to
say-
remediate immediately and not reoccupy
No,
this
she
apartment.
asked to go out there. It
This-
says, after tenants.
No, it's not, because it also says that the,
Inspectional
no,
services
it's saying that the.
shall.
Part isn't clear.
So we were ready to come back
What's not
out.
clear is the
Well, I
fact
think you have a very clear order
We were
that
ready
says you're
to-
supposed to do this.
No. What I'm saying with regards to clarity is that there's a determination being made that it's chronic dampness,
Correct.
which we disagree with. And again, my understanding is that the basis of these appeals is we can.
Disagreements noted.
Thank you. And then the additional piece is that with regards to remediation, we have a professional company that's been out there indicating that the request to remove walls is not appropriate. So we disagree with the order, Mr. P. So that's the basis we're here. If what Ms. Grant is saying today, and it sounds like she is, had you called us, we would have let you know that it's just remove a section and let us know what the findings are. Why doesn't the order say that?
Okay, so you're
Why doesn't the
focused on
order say-
fact that the order does not say remove the 11 inches and wall 6.
Remove
or
a section and let
this.
us know the results.
The word
Okay, so,
affected,
but
which means
I think
you
we
tell
all,
us.
You also are ordering not to reoccupy this apartment until we have a certificate of compliance. And
That would be us. from-
that would mean that we are out of compliance.
You have mold on the walls, it's out of compliance.
correct?
That's it. You can't rent with a known condition. You have a condition of mold on the walls. Can't do that. And it continually comes back. And I actually might want to hear from the tenant, just to find out how often, and how long
Yeah, I
does it
would
take
too.
this mold to grow and that type of thing, because
Actually,
I
you have a
personally don't know.
timeline here, going back
I
to
don't know.
March, it seems.
Well, you said establishing a condition, again, you objected to bringing up old parts here, but the order letter that was done in 2007 did very clearly show over 17 years, health staff and documented chronic dampness complaints in a list of buildings, including number 4, and AIMCO was ordered to engage a consultant, as Dr. McMillan read, and then we have here a report from an engineer to address that. To me, that does establish a past condition
Not to do number 4.
that
And-
that building was not done. So
By all means, the property has put the company has put a lot of money back into the property to try to cooperate with the town. And Susan has said as much, and yes, looking back on this, Michelle, I'm sorry, I was not the one who talked to you. From my communication with Dan was that the conversation he had with you was that he would be receiving an order. And that's what was the communication. And I tried to send an email on the Monday preceding, trying to send you this assessment report. Apologize if it didn't get through. I did not bring it. Okay. And in the email, I asked, were there areas of elevated moisture that we could address? That was in my email and I attached this report that showed that we could not find areas of elevated moisture
And as Susan was just talking,
And
it's a vacant apartment.
Okay.
And again, there is levels of moisture that comes back when there are people in the apartment, when there's, appliances in the apartment. That's just a known fact.
So, in regards to maybe the communication breakdown, I just want to make it known that we did have a call with Michelle. We were told to wait till the complaint came, and then on the Monday that the complaint is ordered, I did email Michelle, and I did not receive a call or a email back to help me identify that I was supposed to remove a small section, because by all means, yes, we would not be here using all your valuable time if we could have just removed a section and shown Michelle that on the backside of that wall there was no issue. But what we did do was we hired a specialist. We paid them $600 to come down and inspect this apartment for us, to tell us what, in their professional specialist opinion, we should do. And they told us to clean the area and to paint it. So all we would like to do is to go by what the specialist told us to do, which is to address the issue in their opinion as a surface
That's not
issue.
what the board told you to do, though.
Okay, and that's why we're here.
And I assume you pay lots of money and have engaged on many times, so query whether they're independent or not. That's not for us to
They have
decide.
licenses
But this
that have
doesn't
to
say
be
do
issued
what
by
your
the state.
consultant asks you to do or recommends you do,
No, it
right?
does say to contact a professional, but may I inquire, and I apologize, I don't know the answer, and I sincerely am asking, is it necessary to pull permits to remove a section of a wall to test?
I'm not sure.
The reason I ask is because within the order as well, and in terms of clarity of the
think it
order,
is to
I understand, but you've also
determine
indicated that necessary permits must be pulled prior to commencing work and appropriate inspections by town
Right.
officials. The inspections, nobody questions.
Once there's a determination, all
But
necessary
my question is, if
permits-
we're removing a section of wall to do some testing, does that require a permit, a building permit? In which case,
Call the building inspector. That's not for, that's
well, oh no, the reason I'm asking
We
is,
don't own their code.
you asked us why we were unclear on the order and why we're here.
what,
Within the order, it says to pull a permit to do removal of a section of a wall to
So I find
inspect
it strange. We're here pulling apart an order letter instead of trying to get to the root of something and trying to fix what the problem is in this apartment. So we're dissecting and pulling this apart for no darn good reason at all. What we want is for the apartments to be free of chronic dampness. So if we could just get off the silliness of what, dissecting word by word by word and separating context, that type of thing. We're here to get that apartment
Sorry,
remediated
I've got
if necessary.
I'm going to take the floor here because I've been sitting here quietly and patiently for about 45 minutes. I'd like to ask some questions of the tenants. You have sent an email to Michelle, Brandy specifically, it's from your email address on November 6th. This is a public meeting. If you could come forward and have a seat at the table.
I assume she's okay to do this first. You can read into the record.
I can either read this into the record or I can ask you questions. This is a public meeting, and everything that we say will be recorded, and it'll be available to anybody who wishes to look at it. But you sent an email to Michelle Grant outlining the different things that have been gone over the years. And one thing that I've noticed is that there was one episode in 2011 when you were sent to a hotel for 2 weeks because of mold on the walls, that the back walls had to be replaced. What I'd like to hear from you is I'd like you to go through, tell us when you originally rented the apartment, how long you've been there, and just go through, if you don't mind, and just read into the record the times that you've brought mold issues to the management so that we can have some background.
So we moved in right around, it was either August or September 2010. And then in September 2011, I had smelt like a funny smell in the apartment, so I called maintenance out, and they did find mold, a moisture issue in both of the bedrooms. So we were put in a hotel for about 2 weeks, and they replaced both of the back bedroom walls, so the walls that are, facing the outside.
Let me interrupt you there. Did we have a permit pulled for that work?
What was that, 2010?
2010.
2011, it was September
2011.
2011.
I have a list, but I'm not sure if I can find them.
Okay, well,
but these are from the building
that's
department.
important, because that'll tell us if it was
2011 building.
inspected or not by somebody
They don't
from the
always
town.
put the numbers.
One of our inspectors or officials. Okay.
No, I
Please
haven't.
continue.
Just me.
And then in August of 2013, and also in December of 2014, the bathroom fan was replaced. We had maintenance come out because everything was fogging up in the bathroom. It didn't seem like it was venting properly. So maintenance came out. They replaced the fan twice. On the second time when they came out, the maintenance man told me that it isn't going to do much better than what this new fan was doing because I'm on a first floor apartment, so it isn't going to vent properly. That's what the maintenance told me. Then in February 2013, black marks appeared through our living room wall. So maintenance came out. They told us they did a moisture reading, and what they told us was that they just needed to paint over it. So they came out, I believe they cleaned the wall, and then they painted over it. And then in January 2014, black marks appeared on the living room wall again. They did the exact same thing, a moisture test, painted over it. February 2015, I spoke with Kevin Mosher, who's one of the vice presidents, I believe, because I wasn't getting anywhere with the office personnel. And it was regarding, we had no AC covers. We have like the wall ACs, there are 2 in the apartment. We had no AC covers throughout the entire winter, and the snow was up past our windows. So I expressed concern to the office multiple times. They never replaced or never came out and put covers on there. So after talking to Kevin Mosher, he assured me covers would be put on. They never were. And then about a month later, we discovered black marks in our master bedroom right around the AC. So they came out, they did the same thing, a moisture reading, cleaned the wall, painted it. And then it was September 2015 that my husband and I decided that we were going to leave because my infant has bad allergies, so we just made a decision that, living in the apartment just wasn't right. There's too many smells and just too many things he can't be around. So I gave notice. My notice paperwork says that we were leaving because of my son's allergies. And then when we were moving the items out, because we moved out early even though we had to give a 60-day notice, we wanted to be out of there. So we left, and in the process of moving our items out, we discovered that my newborn's dresser was covered in mold. So that's when I then reached out to the leasing office, and they said nothing was wrong with the apartment. They did a moisture reading, what they told you tonight, and that's when I contacted the Board of Health.
Did you tell me something about pneumonia?
Yeah, my husband and I have both had walking pneumonia every year. And I do have a couple doctors' records to show that.
Okay.
Only year I didn't have it was this past year, and I was pregnant, so I blamed my prenatals.
I'm not sure there's a way to correlate your walking pneumonia and whatever's going on in the apartment. That's pretty tough to do.
Yeah.
That's not our job, but.
No.
But I think that there's a pattern that this apartment is chronically uninhabitable.
Aren't you curious as to see what's going on? I mean, don't you want to know what's cooking?
Absolutely not, and I think actually Ms. Sawyer has identified what the issue is. There's no doubt as to where this property is located. Nobody will contest the fact that, if I understand correctly, that we're built essentially on what used to be swamp.
Yeah.
So there's no question that the exterior findings, if you were to actually do readings in the exterior,
No, we
that
understand
very
that.
likely it's going to be very similar to what's in the interior.
Well, we understand that, but it's your job, though, to make the interior habitable, so
Or not
they...
renting.
Yeah, or not rented. So what I want to know...
Just treat it,
See,
like not just.
when you come before us, we're the end of the line, in a sense. You know, there's other end of the lines, too, but now you're asking for us to make a decision. But I'm listening to all the facts, and I don't hear that you want to just see if you can take care of the problem so you can make it more habitable for future residents of the apartment.
I mean, we're happy to, like Michelle said, cut out areas of wall. I guess the clarification was not, or wasn't clear that, you know, that was something that we could do. We felt the order was determining that.
It didn't say cut out the entire walls.
It said to replace throughout.
So can we insert this, and we play lawyer here, and we insert the words affected portions of wall ceilings? Does that make everyone happy?
This has nothing
Is
to
that-
do with
Is that what we're
lawyering.
talking
Again,
about?
Mr. Fixler, you said that, don't you want to know what's going on in terms of a chronic issue? I've listened also to
I'm talking
what Ms.
about in their, with their, listen to me.
Yep.
I'm talking about with their experience in the apartment over the last 5 years, I would think, listen, this is not my area of expertise, moisture, but somebody mentioned an air exchange unit to maybe move the air. Again, this is not my area of expertise, but I would think you'd want to do whatever you can to make it more habitable for the tenants.
So-
These particular tenants, but they're moving. I'm not talking about previously or anything else.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about previously either, but hearing from these particular tenants, what I heard, and again, I appreciate the fact that Mr. McMillan indicated let's hear directly from the tenants. What I heard was 2010 move-in. A year later in September, they indicated there was some moisture on the walls, which were replaced. A year later again, actually 2 years, in August of 2013, they said their fans weren't working. That was replaced again in December 2014. Fans replaced in the bathroom. The inquiry was this chronic mold issue. And we're talking about fans being replaced in the bathroom. We're talking about a moisture issue on an annual basis. It is not uncommon, especially for this property. I think at the end of the day, the question is going to be, and I don't disagree with you, that yes, our responsibility as landlords under the state sanitary code is to provide a habitable apartment. Habitable, though, does not mean with zero issues. You may, as Ms. Sawyer indicated, do a test today when it's unoccupied. You may get a certificate of compliance. She's indicated as soon as you occupy that apartment and you put some machinery in there or people, it's coming back. So let me ask you, board members, if we get a certificate of compliance, if we do exactly what the board is asking, find whatever the issue is, address it, and yet we occupy it and an issue happens again, we're going to be immediately out of compliance. But that's why we have in our lease, notify us. We will respond. This is a responsive landlord. This isn't one trying to avoid their responsibilities. All we are here for, and you are correct that this is definitely blown up into something much bigger, is the order requires building permits to be pulled in order to remove walls. If you are saying now that that's not the case, thank you. Thank you, and we appreciate that.
Gotta get away from dissecting the
Time out.
letter.
Let's be clear. This says necessary permits must be pulled. Okay? If it's a permit is necessary, then it must be pulled.
Exactly.
If it's not necessary, it needn't be pulled.
Exactly.
So let's not play games with the building
Oh,
permits.
no, that's it. That
Okay.
would be,
No.
if permits are necessary, they
No,
should be pulled.
it
This
says
permits.
necessary permits must be pulled. If a permit is unnecessary, it must not be
No,
pulled.
necessary in
Okay?
that case would be, and
Okay.
I'm not trying to play lawyer.
Okay, but
Necessary
you-
is
but you are.
synonymous with required or requisite. So requisite permits.
Okay,
So there's no implication there that if they are necessary. If necessary, I agree, is not an issue.
Okay, so we're going to stop arguing about this, okay?
I appreciate
And
it.
we're going to cut to the
one
chase.
person at a time.
Because
You're right.
it seems to me that you've come here to tell us that you don't like this order, okay?
That's
And-
our right and what we, absolutely.
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 Okay. And so what you don't like about this order is, what I've heard is you don't think it's specific enough about what we should do, or about what you're supposed to do, because you're claiming you need to tear down walls and you need to do all this stuff. So you put the words in here, portions of, you fix the mold, and if this upsets you that it says necessary permits, if you'd like to say building permits, if required, must be pulled. And then, can we just be done with this? Or do you have a larger
Absolutely.
issue?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly the issue.
Very well, then.
Mr. Pease, I appreciate you actually making these statements. That's the basis of our appeal.
Okay.
I don't think, we've been talking
anyone on
about
the board
issues in
have
the
a
past
problem
5
if
years
we
and the
say
past
this is what
25
we need
years.
to do?
That's all we're asking.
But once you've found a violation, once we go in and we find other things, it does not obviate further action based on the findings.
Right.
If I'm a cancer surgeon and I go in to start operating on something and I find 5 things that I didn't expect, that doesn't mean I'm not going to take care of them.
Absolutely.
We don't
Okay.
want this to come back again.
These people are not problem tenants. They've been there for 4 years. This board is an experienced board. We deal with problem landlords and problem tenants. These are not problem tenants. These are not problem tenants. Let me say it again. These are not problem tenants.
And
And
we
you're
agree with you.
suggesting to me that they're problem tenants
Absolutely
does
not.
not hold water,
Mr.
and it's
McMillan, we
offensive
never
to me.
suggested
They're
that
not
they are-
problem tenants.
We never made that statement to you, Mr.
You said
McMillan.
earlier that the problem is tenant-related.
We said that the moisture issues.
These are not problem tenants. I'll say it
The
again.
moisture issues in this apartment are caused by the tenants. We're not saying they are problem tenants. We would not have renewed them for 4 years. We would not have extended a new lease in earlier this year if they were problem tenants.
So if they didn't live
Look
there,
into the
would they
problem
have?
and correct and take down what needs to be
The
taken
moisture-
down.
No one lives there.
Make a motion.
This wouldn't
So
happen.
no one can live there.
It may not
Otherwise,
have.
it may.
I'm going to make a
You're right,
motion.
no one can live
So
there.
maybe we should vacate that apartment going forward.
I'm going to make a motion.
I'm not.
Motion is going to be made. I make the motion that we maintain the order letter as such, and that whatever repairs need to be done to the property are done to correct the problems at hand.
Second.
Discussion. Discussion.
Well, I liked the verbiage.
Personally in favor of being more specific about that. I read this and it says just start ripping out walls and.
Yeah, we can definitely
I see
be
the
more
point.
specific, because that's what we've done in the past.
And
Isn't that correct?
we sincerely appreciate that.
All right, well, I move to amend Larry's order to include the specificity as suggested by Ed.
Okay,
Second.
I agree.
So why don't you restate that very clearly?
Certainly. Owner shall hire a licensed professional mediation company to remove affected portions of walls, ceilings, etc. You see mold, rip it out. Submitted to our office must be submitted to our office on findings. Building permits, if required, must be pulled prior to commencing work. The end.
Well, not the end, inappropriate inspections.
Right. The end of changes.
Do you have any comment on?
No, in fact, I'd like to thank you for that clarification and apologize to the extent that this was deemed to be any lawyering up. This was the entire basis of this.
This whole thing was a communication issue. I'm telling you now, this could have been worked out way in advance of this meeting. I'm telling you.
Certainly, we are happy to do that in the future. Again, in any normal circumstance, I don't think there would be any issue. When I'm receiving correspondence from opposing counsel, though, before we even hear from the Board of Health, suggesting that we haven't been responding, that was the problem we had. That's the reason we're before you, and also to figure out what are we removing? What permits are we pulling?
Our
And we
understanding
appreciate
was
the
that
clarification.
They had their attorney way before we even got in there, so.
Well, that's between you and them.
Yep.
That's between you and them. We're done.
Absolutely.
But the point,
vote
we
to
don't
amend.
do building
We
permits.
didn't
The
vote to
building
amend.
permit is to the building inspector. That's why we have to leave it if required. We can't tell you what permits are required. That's where these gentlemen would have to talk with the building department when they determine an area and what affected areas are going to be removed. It's not in our domain to do building permits.
And in our files here, there are no building permits for those 2 fans. There are no building permits for some of there's remediation in some of these apartments. Building permits have not been pulled for those apartments.
For this apartment?
For apartments that we have listed as had to be remediated.
I'm very concerned about
So
the
we-
fan.
yeah.
I think we should, I'm going to request maybe we could have an actual building permit pulled to check this fan? Because clearly when it's turned on, it doesn't do its
These exhaust fans are
job.
not designed to exhaust moisture, they're designed to exhaust odors. So a bathroom fan is not meant to exhaust the moisture, it's meant to exhaust the odor. That is something that I just know from having built houses, that it's just not designed for the job. If the place needs a ventilation system, then it needs a ventilation system. And changing the bathroom fan 3 or 4 times isn't going to do that. Now, that's not this board's expertise to figure out the engineering on this. We're just here to enforce the code, the housing code as it is.
Well, the suggestion by Smith & Wesson, as a professional company, the fact that they weren't turning the fan on lead me to believe that they feel that that is related. So that's why I suggested,
First of all,
that's all.
when the
They
bathroom
think
is
so.
in
Yeah,
use,
that's
the
all.
light goes on and the fan
Yeah,
comes on,
so
unless
right.
unless they're disabling and rewiring
No,
that,
I'm not
you know.
suggesting that. No, I'm
I
just
just don't,
wondering if
I
it's
don't
strong
believe it
enough.
holds water.
I'm wondering if it's strong enough, is all I'm saying. Whether
Yeah.
we should
No,
have that looked
I-
into.
I don't find their report credible.
Well, right now, it can't be, it's not going to be,
Right.
we're prohibiting it from being rented.
I'm
That's what
agreeing.
you're
You
saying.
know, the baby's dresser has got mold on the back of it. I mean, come on.
Well, and this is what I'm saying. Smith & Wesson is suggesting to just clean the mold and we'll be all set. We're suggesting that it's a condition that once reoccupied will happen
Will
again.
happen again.
And we're not addressing the actual issue, which was brought up by their own people that said they need to address that water. It needs to be, they give out dehumidifiers, by the way. They have like 60 or 70 of them in other units that the tenants have to dump the water out all the time. So they know that this is going on.
Isn't that a
So,
subject for either a different order or a different forum than this? I mean, we're here talking about
well, but
this
we're
order.
talking about this one that it keeps coming back, and I don't want to just.
But we issued an order telling them to remove walls and ceilings. We didn't issue an order telling them fix their entire apartment complex, relocate, right? I mean, so
Actually, the
that's what we're talking about.
2007 order kind of did that.
And we have a motion, it's been seconded, and we should vote on
We
it.
have to vote on the amended motion. And also, it's not going to be rented until this is cleared up, right? So, right
If
now,
we go by them, it'll be cleared up when it's painted.
no, it has to be,
They have to
it'll be-
comply with the order.
they have to comply with the order.
We would need, my understanding is we would also need a certificate of occupancy for reletting. So,
We don't
We don't issue occupancy permits.
It's a letter. Is all we issue, but it will be based.
Now, what I want to know, before we vote on the amended motion, is that, what if they just paint over it now anyway, and it looks great?
Well,
So,
you can specify in
What
the
I'm just
order that
saying.
they can be
Those spots that you
present
see.
to see a section of wall in affected
yeah,
areas.
I think it
to
should be inspected once they,
So open it up.
That's it.
And
That's
that
it.
would be the conversation
Appropriate
that we've
inspections
had,
should
and
be
we've
done.
done that in the
Okay.
past.
It's in there.
They've opened
It's in
up a
there.
wall, and we've gone out and we've viewed
all right, so
it,
it's in
just to
the,
make sure.
it's in the order letter, appropriate inspections, and that would be us. So when you do open up everything, that's when the health department has to come down. You have to stop until we take a look and see what's going on.
yeah. And certainly, there's no issue in terms of coordinating with Ms. Grant.
Okay.
We've opened these walls. Are there any additional walls that need to, or sections that need to be?
Okay, that's in the order letter, so I mean,
In our
we're just
history,
amending.
in our experience, those small, spots that were coming through the bedroom wall is an indication that the mold is returning. And you may not get a high moisture at that point, but clearly you can bleach it down and take the spot away and paint over it for a time, and then it will come back again. And that's history, and that's history at a lot of these apartments as well, specifically this apartment. So it has come back. They did have it remediated, and it did come back.
Absolutely. And Ms. Grant.
So we know that there's a
I think this
moisture
is- I
problem
think this is-
in this particular
Absolutely.
apartment.
I think this is somewhat akin to lead paint. You have lead paint that flakes, you're not in violation
This
of any
is not
state law.
about lead
I understand,
paint.
but what I'm telling you is
This
that.
is about moisture.
I totally understand, but it's akin to lead paint. You have lead paint in apartments, which need to be removed if you have anybody under the age of 6 in the apartment. However, doesn't mean you have to remediate without that child in there. What you would have to do is ensure that there's no flaking. And that those
No.
sections of the paint, yes,
So in
encapsulating.
lead paint, but we're talking
we're
about
getting off-
moisture.
we're getting
We're
off
getting
topic.
way off it again.
We're gonna call for an
And
immediate
we're-
vote on
this
this
is
matter.
ridiculous.
You have
vote
an
on the
existing
amended
condition of moisture.
motion.
Wiping it down rather than opening all walls is what would be determined appropriate from Smith and Wesson.
This is a straight
if we
from
could,
the amendment. So
if we could amend it to basically be more specific, we will certainly allow the Board of Health to be present, to coordinate with them. That's all.
Yes, sir.
Smith and Wessel said they went through the bathroom, made sure it was all clear, painted, wiped down. But if you actually stick your face up and in the closet and on the back of the door, not the door, the upper panel, it's still got mold all over it. So they're not doing their job properly, or someone's not cleaning it properly. Because there's still mold there the day I actually turned the keys in. And I have photos. And if we go there right now, there's still mold there.
That is a photo I turned in to the board here to show them that
What day was that?
there was.
When did I turn the keys in, the 18th?
Then I turned a photo into them showing that there was an area that was missed inside the bathroom, but that area is on a door jamb that
You
is.
do a great job of missing stuff all the time, just painting over and cleaning. Kids get sick, right?
For sure, no one wants children to get sick. We want to comply with the order. We want the order to be more specific. It was too broad, and we tried to clarify with the Board of Health to see if we could get more.
Our orders are not supposed to be specific, they're supposed to be broad so that
I'm not sure,
we can
you
figure
may
out
be
what the
getting too
answer to the
specific.
question is.
Our
We
job is
recite
not to
a
tell
condition.
you
We're
the
never
condition.
to tell you exactly what to do. We are to
I don't
tell
know
you
if we should
about a
amend it.
condition that we observed. We are not to tell you how to fix it. So that's how we
My
do it.
name's Dan O'Connor, I'm the new community manager there. I come from Florida, so I'm kind of brand new here, but I'm not brand new to a mold mildew issue.
You're probably the expert on that.
I did reach out and I called and I spoke with you first, and you're very nice about welcoming me and saying like, hey, let's get together and talk about this. And then afterwards, I talked to Michelle, and I've dealt with code and Board of Health and kind of said, okay, you said that there's this issue. What do we need to do going forward? I had Smith and Wesson come out. This is what they recommended. And your response was that, no, you got to rip walls out. It's through the walls. You need to rip it out.
No,
So
that was
why
never said, sir.
I respectfully disagree.
Absolutely
So-
Okay,
not.
I have to stop here. We have an amended motion before us. You're getting off the discussion of where
You
parliamentary
would have
authority
to
needs to go
open
here.
up a
So
wall.
We're getting too specific. They make
we're
up
going to
a
work.
wall and say we're in great shape.
We have an amended. We need to, Larry,
Yeah.
We put it back
we need
in
to speak about an amendment.
professionals' hands?
We have a primary motion. We have an amendment. We need to vote on the amendment first, then we'll have the main motion before us.
I'm still discussion for the amended motion, right?
We're going to discuss the amendment right now,
That's what I'm doing.
which was,
I'm still wondering if we should do the amendment. I'm not worried if you guys are upset. I'm worried about the people that are living there, that lived there, and then future occupants. So how you feel,
Indication that we're not concerned about that, then.
We haven't done our job, and I apologize for that.
yeah, I'm not sure we should amend it. I think we might want to leave the order letter as it is. I think we should, even if there's some question as to how much of a wall you should cut down, I think it should be in there. And if it needs to be done, it needs to be done, and that's it.
I think the amendment clarifies the issue. Certainly trust and confide in Michelle. I know that she'll be there at that time. If she wants more, a larger section to be cut out, then a larger section will be cut out. So I think we should go with the amendment.
Anybody else?
No, I'd like to vote on the amendment.
All right. I mean, I'll leave it be, as long as they do the job. That's all I care about for future residents now, and that's unfortunate for the residents that were there and what they went through. But it has to be whatever it takes to correct the problem, since it's a known issue now, and you came before us. It has to be whatever it takes to correct that apartment, because you cannot rent that until we give you the okay to rent it, right?
Agreed. Very clearly says that. Agreed.
Okay?
All right.
all right, so the amendment, the initial motion was just to keep the order letter in place. We amended it, which is what Ed offered. So we're going to vote on the amendments to the main motion. So it's just adding in the parts where Ed said, add in portions of and building inspections if required. So that's just, we're going to vote on adding that part into the main motion. So is there any discussion on that specific amendment?
If that passed, Michelle would reissue the order tomorrow, I assume, and you would have, it's 14 days by statute to
Yeah.
comply? Or? Yep.
Well, we'll vote on the amendment, then we'll vote on the main order.
Yep.
So if there's no other discussion, let's vote on that amendment, which includes, again, to remove affected portions of walls, ceilings, and the addition of building permits, if required, must be pulled prior to commencing work. All those who are voting for that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. So now we have a main motion before us of this order letter as amended, as we just voted. So now we can have any discussion on that. I think the implication that's not stated here is that when you remove walls, sometimes you find things behind walls. If something is found that shows dampness or problems, that has to be then remediated at the direction, or not, Michelle's not going to tell you what to do, but that has to be addressed. It's not just a matter of replacing the walls. If a portion of the wall comes down and they find dampness behind that, it can't just be a matter of putting the wall back up. It has to be corrected.
We wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
But we may have to take the whole
Order
I
read
think
that walls will not be closed unless the board indicates that they're okay
No,
with
I don't
the
think I need to
wall
be
being
that
closed.
explicit, but the idea is that a permit, an inspection, more than implies that, but inspection, if a further problem is found, I don't want to be back here saying, you didn't say that I have to fix water if I find it behind the wall.
Absolutely not.
I want that to be in the record. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be in this, but to us, that's an understanding of an inspection by our team, that not that just you cut down the wall and put a new wall up, but then when something is discovered behind the wall, if it is, it needs to be corrected.
Absolutely.
I think it's fair to say this is largely an argument over the semantics of this. The problem is they have mold, and if you don't fix it, you're going to come back to a very unsympathetic board.
I appreciate that.
Pretty simple.
I appreciate that.
Okay, well, then we vote the main motion as amended.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on the order letter as presented and amended? No? Joe, you have something you want to say?
No.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the main motion as amended? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that was unanimous also.
We anticipate we should be done well in advance of any 14-day order. They'll be in touch with you very soon, Ms. Grant. And we do
So-
sincerely appreciate your time and apologize that we took so much of it.
So Michelle, you reissue this tomorrow? Okay.
With what's going on, I'm just making a statement in general, because we're done with this portion now, but did you apologize to those two fine people back there about the problems they've had with mold throughout the last 5 years? They look like, did anybody say, I'm sorry you went through this?
Well, they're still trying to charge us a buyout fee.
Looks right.
How do you like that?
So, I'm sorry, an apology for not addressing something? or-
Know that they had this issue to begin with. It's just common courtesy. I'm very sorry you went through this.
Oh,
You tried to make your living experience as pleasant as possible.
I don't think they would even argue that we haven't responded to every time that they've indicated they have an issue. I don't think that they would sit here today and say they have not addressed or never responded to us.
Guys, I sincerely apologize that you were not 100% satisfied with your apartment.
You're saying we were satisfied, and we got told there was covers put on the ACs. There wasn't. It was 4 feet of snow, and the only reason I found out is because I went out there and dug them both out.
And you received 3 months rent
Yeah,
for the situation?
Because our rent
I think
was
this is
skyrocketed.
out of the grounds of the...
It is, but
Government.
again, to
Sorry.
the extent that we were asked for an apology, this is not a situation where the landlord has not been responsive. A 3 months rent is still provided, and there are several efforts that have been made here. Sometimes you can't make certain people happy, unfortunately, so this is not a situation where we haven't addressed it. Thank you.
Thank you. May we be excused? Is that okay?
So, just a couple quick things. Larry, you have in your folder there the minutes from October 27th, is that correct?
I do. I've read them over, they're fine.
Okay, those have been passed around and reviewed, so
Move
I would.
approval of the minutes as printed and distributed.
Second?
All those in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Good luck in your future.
Good luck.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the baby.
It's getting big. Better now that he's gonna stay for home. Have a good night, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
No basement
Thank you.
apartments. No basement apartments. Once you have allergies, you don't want to live in the basement.
Under communications and announcements, I have from the chair one announcement to make. About 3 weeks ago, the North Andover Board of Selectmen, I'll say, authorized the formation of a task force to study the opiate addiction problem that's becoming epidemic in North Andover, Merrimack Valley, Massachusetts, and the country. We, as a board, we were asked to officially provide a representative to that task force. I've had conversations, and I'm with Ed, and I'm going to officially appoint member Ed Pease to that task force. As such, he's our official representative, but as the task force moves forward, it doesn't mean that he's required to be the only person to speak there or be at the meetings. In the format of a task force, he may not be available, so another one of us could fill in.
Yes.
There may be events that staff would go. There may be events more board members would go, but in terms of, we'll call it official communication, Ed will be our appointed member to that board, or to that task force. So that's being managed through the town manager's office under the strong interest of Selectman DeCollegiero, who has really worked this, and I'm sure will provide good energy in moving it forward.
As opposed to low energy.
Yeah, as opposed to low energy, yes.
We wouldn't want low energy.
No, we don't. We're all about good energy.
Good energy,
Good energy.
yes.
So are there any other points under this section that anybody would like to bring up?
No. Congratulations, Ed.
For the service.
Anything from this side of the table? Can you give us a quick update on how Debbie's doing with flu shots? Not to put you on the spot, but
She's done.
If she has any left, I'd be surprised. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think she's done. She's now starting the shingle shots, and she has people lined up. She's just going to do a small amount. She could basically purchase 10 and give 10. Purchase 10 and give 10. Unfortunately, Medicare doesn't pay for it, and it's $180 a shot. So we're charging $150, so we're trying to give the elderly a break. However, if you're between 50 and 65, most of the insurances do cover it, so we can get reimbursed from them, but there's no Medicare reimbursement. So and pneumonia shots. She's also going to be offering pneumonia shots, so she's had sign-up sheets for both pneumonia and shingles. Anybody can call the office if they like either of those.
What is the recommended frequency for these shots, for shingles and pneumonia?
They've lowered it to 50 now, I believe, age 50 and up for shingles. I think you just get the
Frequency,
one.
How often?
I think it's just one, as far as I know. And the
Shingles once in one's life, or once every 10 years, or?
doctors, do you know,
I
shingles?
think shingles is once. I know
Once.
pneumococcal, the pneumonia is once per lifetime.
Well, they recently asked you to get pneumonia again, which we told everyone they weren't, so I'm
Well,
not
they
sure
have
if
a new,
something changed.
they have a new.
They have a new one,
There's a new
so
pneumonia shot that you should
Yeah.
get because
Oh,
it's
is it?
just more, it has more coverage.
a lot of people before thought they were covered if you're past 65 and you had a pneumonia.
Yeah, no,
Now
the
they're
new
asking
one,
you
the
to
new one
get
is
it
worth
again.
getting a new one.
Good, yeah.
So
So-
even if you had a shot, say, 3 years ago,
Yeah, no,
5 years ago?
if you had
could
one
get
2
it
years
on-
ago, you should get a new
Well,
one.
because it's a new version, but not the new version, you need to get it over and over again.
No.
Get the new
The new
one is a
version
once per
covers
life.
more strains that were not covered in the old version. It's something like 23
So the
strains.
shingles is once a life? and-
Shingles is once at age 60 or 65, yeah,
If you've had chickenpox.
if you've had chicken pox, yeah.
I've had the shingle shot.
They're supposed to.
You look 65.
I'm not
No,
65, but I've
no,
had
over
shingles.
50. Now, they lowered the age. for all of us. Oh, I'm sorry, she couldn't get one because she's not.
It's only because they got the shingles.
That's why, yes. That's it. That's all I've got.
Lisa, how are the permits coming back?
Slowly coming back, but they're starting. Some people are coming in, mailing them in.
So again, remind us and the community that this year we're sending out a notice that next year is when the date will change, correct?
Yes, everyone will, for food and dumpster, will get the notice saying that it's been extended for a couple months to the end of February.
So we're extending it this year. So this year's food and dumpster permits are being extended from January 1 to
February 28th,
February 28th
2017.
of 2017. So this year, in the 1 year's permit fee, they're getting 14 months. What a deal.
Yeah.
So they will not look forward to in the end of 2016, getting renewals, but to later in the spring.
I'll send out reminder notices sometime in January of 2017 to remind them to renew it before the end of February 2017.
Okay? Anything else? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Oh, you got it.
Well, no, I'm not, I'm asking for the motion.
Move to adjourn.
I said.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.